everyone, I'm Vanessa and today I'm here to do my August wrap-up. So I think I'm just gonna go in the order that I read them in, and I think the first thing I read in August was Antigone, the play by Sophocles. I'd already read this, but I read it again because my independent studies professor wanted me to. If you haven't read it, I highly recommend it. It's really good. It is basically about, I forget how everyone is related, but basically this woman, Antigone, her brother, I think, dies in war, but he was like a traitor. So the king, who is also related, like they're all family, says that he cannot have a proper burial, which is obviously, that's a big deal. But the king is like, no, we have to uphold the law, and Antigone is like, no, we have to uphold what is like moral and right, even if it goes against the law. And it's, like I said, a Greek tragedy, so tragic things happen. But the next thing that I read was How to Be an Anti-Racist by Ibram X. Kendi, and this book was so like just informative and educational. Basically, the author just discusses the ways in which racism has permeated his life, and even in the sense that he himself has held like internalized racist views. And what I really liked about this book was that it was a mixture of his own personal feelings and stories, and then also historical context. And he would discuss historical events and kind of how things progressed to where they are now, or he would cite like scientific studies on certain topics and stuff like that. I thought it was a really good discussion about like what it would look like if we all rejected those ideas, and like what kind of rejection it takes to get away from things that are so ingrained, and also so like even in the ways that we reject them, sometimes we're still reinforcing them. The next book that I read was An Arc from Penguin Teen for Harrow Lake by Kat Ellis, which I absolutely loved. This book just came out at the end of August, and I do have a whole review up about how much I loved it if you want to hear further thoughts. But basically, it is a YA horror novel. I saw a lot of inspiration from like the gothic horror genre, which I always love, and I thought that it was just an example of horror done really well and in a way that really like hits deeper and means something, and I really loved it. So I highly recommend it. After that, I read Cinderella is Dead, which I was so excited about. I was waiting on this hold from the library forever. I didn't end up liking this book as much as I thought I would, but there were still some things that I really liked about it. Basically the premise is that it is a Cinderella, not really a retelling, like kind of a sequel. Like it's set in this kind of dystopian future after Cinderella lived, and now her story is being used as almost like this religious text, but it's being used in a very oppressive way. And basically every year all of the young women in the kingdom are required to go to a ball and be chosen by a husband, and the men have all the power here. It's a very misogynistic and very heteronormative society, and our main character is a young black girl, which is super exciting. And the thing that kicks off the struggle in this book is that she doesn't want to go to this ball and get chosen by a husband because she is in love with a girl. So I really liked the way that this book used the Cinderella story to explore those topics, from, like I said, misogyny to homophobia and compulsory heterosexuality, as well as things like domestic abuse and class inequality and all of that. I don't think that race was really an issue in this book, which was kind of nice. I know that I've definitely heard a lot of people say that it's important to have books with black characters where they're not being oppressed because of their race. That was kind of cool. I obviously love the sapphic romances, everything's great there, but the one thing that kind of like made me not like this book is that it's almost like the tone of the story doesn't match the content, if that makes sense. It probably doesn't. Like when the content of a story is so like dark and gritty and edgy, like in this book there are like husbands beating their wives in the streets and stuff. Like it's a book that you would probably want trigger warnings for, but the tone of it feels like more of a fluffy juvenile fantasy story. Overall, it's still a really solid book and one that I would definitely recommend. After that, I read another arc from Penguin Teen, which was The Wits and Daughters, and the synopsis of this book calls it a ghost story, and you know, it's from the point of view of a ghost that is like haunting the house of her descendants and stuff like that, but that's really not what's going on. I mean, the point of view is between like an ancestor from generations ago telling her own life story to us after the fact, and then the other chapters are from the point of view of her descendants who are living in the current day times. Basically, she's just telling her story, and then we're also witnessing at the same time the story of these modern day daughters in the family. It is very centered on kind of what it's like to grow up as a young woman and things that young women typically experience in their youth. And the book really like dives in all the way on those things. You know, we talk about a lot of really taboo topics, and the book talks about them so bluntly. Like it is not using like cutesy language to imply what's happening. Like we are are discussing the rags that this woman in the 1800s used when she first got her period versus the modern day kids like trying to find the right way to insert a diva cup. And it of course goes into sexual topics, and I think that something that like bothered me a little bit was that there was definitely an uncomfortable sexual relationship between like an 18-year-old, I want to say, and a 14 or 15-year-old. Yeah, it's a 19-year-old boy and a 15-year-old girl. It wasn't clear if the book was aware that it was portraying something inappropriate and problematic, or if it was just like, hey, here's a romance happening. And again, I don't know, maybe that discomfort was intentional, because this is something that happens and people don't realize it's inappropriate when it's happening. I could have done with a little bit more clarification on the inappropriateness of that relationship. But I mean, overall, this was a really beautiful book. The writing was so like atmospheric. It's more of, I would say, a pretty literary connection of women's issues through like a generational family saga. So anyways, the next thing that I read was The Princess Bride. I read this with the Keep It Classic book club. And I mean, who doesn't like The Princess Bride? I don't think that I'm as into it as a lot of other people are. I watched it for the first time in my 20s, so it's not something that I'm like so nostalgic about. But I mean, the book was good. I think that there were some questionable things going on, but that's true in the movie too. One thing that I think the book had that was really different was these backstories for the different characters. We had a backstory for Inigo and for Fezzik, and they were so heartfelt and so genuine, and honestly, I don't even really care about Wesley and Buttercup at this point. I would really just like more about Inigo and Fezzik and their friendship and their like companionship with each other and everything they've been through in their lives. Oh, it was really beautiful. After that, I was helping to co-host the Scallywagathon with Allie and Amanda, and I read 4 books for that. The first one was The Stars and the Blackness Between Them, which I've heard so many good things about. Like, that is just such a beautiful story. And it really was. Basically, it follows these 2 teenage black girls. One of them has grown up in Minneapolis, I think, and then the other one is from Trinidad, and she moves to Minneapolis to live with her father after her mother in Trinidad catches her with a girl. And it obviously explores topics like sexuality and race issues. Also, one of the girls ends up being diagnosed with a terminal illness, so it goes into that. After that, I read Daughter of the Siren Queen, because you know I had to add a pirate book to the Scallywagathon TBR, and this was really good. I really like this duology. It is about a woman pirate with an all-woman pirate ship and like an enemies to lovers romance going on. Definitely a really fun book. I also read With the Fire on High by Elizabeth Acevedo, which I was so happy someone recommended that I get the audiobook for it, so I did. And I'm so glad. That was amazing advice, because Elizabeth Acevedo actually narrates it herself, and her voice is so beautiful and so amazing. But this book is about a teenage girl. She's a senior in high school, and she loves cooking, and she wants to take this elective that's a culinary arts class, and it includes a trip to Spain. And it's just perfect for her, but unfortunately her dreams sometimes clash with her responsibilities, because she does have to take care of her daughter, who she had when she was like a freshman or a sophomore. And it was just a really good story about her navigating, you know, not only the struggles and the stigma that she has from being a mother so young, but also how much it means to her to be a good mom, and how much she still has those dreams for her own life and wants to pursue those dreams to give a better life to her daughter and to set an example. And I loved the main character so much. I loved how passionate and how self-assured she was. You know, like, she knows that she's capable. She knows that she deserves these things. It's just a question of how she's going to get to them. And it was a really beautiful book. After that, I read another arc from Penguin Teen, which was Skywatchers, which is about, it's set during the Cold War, and it's about these kids who are in a high school club to watch the sky for Russian missiles. But one night they see a UFO, and they go find out what this mysterious light was, and they end up going missing like a week or something like that. And when they return, they don't have any memory of what happened. And the story just kind of follows them trying to piece together what happened to them. I will say that I was not a fan of this book. The things that I was excited for were, first of all, UFO and alien stuff, and second of all, historical fiction. And to me, this book wasn't either of those things, because the historical setting, it's like, yeah, it's set during the Cold War, and you kind of get some mentions of, you know, the Red Scare or whatever that's going on. But ultimately, there wasn't a lot of like atmosphere or presence of the time period. And then with the UFO stuff, it didn't ever really get into it. Like, the kids get abducted at the beginning of the novel. We know what happened. It's in the synopsis, right? We know it was a UFO. We know it was aliens. But yet we spend an entire 60% of the book not knowing what happened. And it's just about these kids being like, I don't know what happened. And grown-ups being like, where were you? And the kids being like, I don't know. Like, having the whole book in that phase, and then just like, boom, at the very end, it's like aliens suddenly. It wasn't very effective for me. And then the alien stuff also wasn't the vibe I was going. When I think of like Cold War aliens, I think of like Roswell vibes, or like, you know, like the kinds of alien stories that people were circulating during that time period, but that wasn't what we got. We got like a very futuristic site, like it felt like a scene from a Star Wars movie or something, and it just, I don't know, the vibes were not it for me. After that, for my English class, we actually read The Road by Cormac McCarthy, which I've had for a very long time and have never read, and I enjoyed it, as you can see. Maybe you can see I tabbed like every single page. This is a dystopian kind of post-apocalyptic novel. The world is dead basically, and it's just about this father and his son on the road, just walking endlessly on the road trying to survive. This book was really fun to analyze and really fun to discuss in class because, I mean, the themes and the symbolism, like it was all so on point. And then the last book that I read in August was another Penguin Teen arc, and that was for Sanctuary. This came out on September 1st, and I just really need everyone to read it. This book is set in a near future dystopia. I believe it's like 2032 or something, where basically the tension in the United States around immigration has really boiled to, like I said, dystopian levels. The wall between the US and Mexico is up. People are being microchipped to verify their identity and their citizenship status. People who are found to be undocumented are either deported on the spot, or even like who knows what other, again, dystopian things are happening to them. And the story follows a teenage girl who, she and her mother are from Colombia, and so they are undocumented, but her younger brother was born in the States, so has a legitimate microchip, but they're all still like living with that constant fear of like their world and their life and their family could be blown apart at any moment of any day over something so just arbitrary and unnecessary as like where they happen to be located when they were born. And it's a really sad situation, and I think that the saddest thing is that even though this book is a dystopian future, the reality is that it's really not. We're already building a wall. We're already ripping families apart and keeping children in cages. We're already ruining people's lives over this stupid thing. We already have millions of people living with this constant fear. I don't know, it really gets to me. I remember a few months ago I read We Are Not From Here, which is also about immigration, and it just, both of these books hit me really hard with just how, not just how unjust the system is, but how completely evil and cruel it is. And I don't know, I can't. I think this is a really important book that everybody should read. That is everything that I read in August. It was a really good reading month for me. I think it's gonna be my last really good reading month for a while because, like I said, I'm back in school now and I have to read all kinds of like school books. But I'm grateful that I got to read so many cool things in August. Let me know in the comments what you read in August. I hope you liked this video, and I hope I get to talk to you soon. Bye!